Last Saturday, I honestly watched one of the most disappointing performances I've seen in a long time, and it came from Patchy Mix. This was the guy that everyone said could be a top 5 bantamweight in the UFC. A killer on the mat, dominated in Bellator, and someone who a lot of the hardcores, including myself, thought could actually shake things up in the UFC. But after what I saw, man, I feel like I got sold a damn dream, okay? Because Patchy Mix looked completely lost out there. No urgency, no adjustments, no wrestling. He just stood there like a deer in headlights while Mario Batista turned up the pace and beat him up pillar to post. I mean, bro, Mario looked like Max Holloway with the amount of volume he was putting out. That's how bad it got. And I get it, Mario's a solid fighter, but he's not some elite level technician. Yet, Mix made him look like one. What shocked me even more was the complete lack of takedown attempts. You're a grappler. That's your entire identity. And you shoot once in a 3-round fight where you're getting lit up on the feet? That's kind of unacceptable. I was sitting there thinking, what happened? This guy used to snatch backs and close the show. But in this fight, it was like he had no idea what he was doing. He looked flat. He looked unsure. And honestly, he looked like he didn't even belong here. I don't want to overreact off one performance, but this wasn't just a loss. This was a reality check, because if you're supposed to be the future contender in this weight class and you show up like that in your debut, then yeah, we got to rethink everything we thought about you. That was rough, man. That was like really rough. And the thing that really stings is it's not like Bautista was doing anything unpredictable. He wasn't reinventing the wheel. He was just showing up with good fundamentals. I'll give him that. Steady output, clean footwork, solid pressure. And that was enough to make Patchy look like a guy who didn't even belong in the UFC. That's how wide the gap looked. And bro, I gotta say it, Patchy's performance didn't just make himself look bad. It made a lot of the Bellator to UFC hypes look fraudulent. We've been saying for months that Mix might be the one guy from the PFL Bellator side who can really break through. And instead, he came out there looking like someone who had no business in there. Barely any takedowns, no scrambles, no threats. You take the back takes away, and what's left? A stiff, one-dimensional dude who can't hang with the UFC middle-tier guys. Forget the top 10. And look, man, I get it. First fight jitters. I get the octagon pressure. But you can't tell me that this was just a bad night. This was a complete shutdown. 1 takedown attempts, that's not a strategy failure. That's an identity crisis, I'm telling you, man. He didn't just get beat physically. He got exposed mentally. There was no plan B, no fire, no urgency to win. Just a guy who looked like he was second guessing himself in real time. And for someone who came in with that much hype, that's brutal. Now we're sitting here wondering, was it just the Bellator matchmaking that made him look like that, like a monster? Because against UFC level competition, that dog was nowhere to be found, okay? Patchy's got a long road ahead of him if he wants to bounce back from this. Because last Saturday night, that wasn't just a loss, man. That was a message loud and clear that he's not ready for this level. And this is where we start getting real, man, because Patchy Mix isn't just some random dude from the regional scene. This was the Bellator golden child. He was supposed to be the one, the crossover champ, the future top 5 guy, but now after watching what Mario Batista just did to him, it really makes you sit back and realize, oh, there's a massive skill gap between these outside promotions and the UFC. And look, I'm not saying that every fighter outside the UFC is trash. That's not what this is. But we gotta stop pretending like it's all the same level of competition, because it really is not. The UFC is different. The pace, the pressure, the depth, it's just not the same, bro. In my opinion, in Bellator, you can get away with only having one elite skill set. You can be a backtaker or a slicker striker or a power wrestler and dominate full divisions. But in the UFC, if you're not well-rounded, if you're not making reads in real time, if you don't have the cardio or durability to go through hell, you're gonna get found out fast. Now, of course, some of these guys are going to get thrown to the wolves. I'm not acting like these were set up with random layups, you know? Patchy Mix, he's not some random prospect. He was the champion over in Bellator, and when the PFL merge happened, he basically walked in with a ton of hype and expectation. So yeah, of course they gave him somebody like Mario Batista. That's a tough dude with sharp boxing, endless cardio, and high fight IQ. That's not an easy debut by any means. Same thing with Kai Asakura. People might not realize how legit that the guy was in Ryzen, but then boom, The UFC hands him Alexander Pantoja, the flyweight champion. That's not even a welcome to the UFC fight. That's getting tossed straight into the lion's den. And I'll be honest, that's an insane level test for your first showing. And then you get MVP, who they gave Kevin Holland. That was more of a fan-friendly striker versus striker fight, but against Holland, no walk in the park. He's long, he's awkward, he's experienced, and he doesn't just fold under pressure. MVP didn't get to dance around some regional level guy. He had to face someone who's been fighting top 5 killers for years, let's be real. So yeah, I get it, these matchups were tough, but here's the thing, they're not passing these tests. And that's what really matters right now. It's not that they're getting fed to legit competition, it's that they're losing, and in this case, getting exposed. And when that happens, it chips away the credibility of those other organizations. Now, I'm not saying that these fighters suck. That would be a lazy and flat out wrong. They're talented. They've done the work in other promotions. I mean, just look at MVP. The dude is still slick, still flashy, still dangerous. But if the best these other promotions have to offer come in and immediately stumble, what does that say? That's where the conversation shifts. The UFC isn't just the biggest platform, it's the ultimate filter. And right now, it's showing us that not everyone is making it through. But here's the thing, all these guys coming over, they're veterans, they've been fighting for years. This isn't some 23-year-old Contender Series prospect who's supposed to be green. These are champions and title challengers from other promotions. I mean, Patchy Mix has 20 plus fights, Pitbull's been around forever, Kaya Sakura was crushing people and rising, so when they come over and start stumbling like this, it tells you something. Because at the end of the day, experience is only as useful as the quality of the opposition you face. You can dominate 10 guys who don't belong in the UFC, and yeah, they look nice on your resume, but the second you fight someone who actually knows how to set traps, mix levels, push a pace, or survive bad position, that's where the difference shows. I mean, let's talk about Michael Chandler. People love to throw his name around like he's some type of proof that Bellator guys can hang. And sure, Chandler had his moments, but let's keep it real. The guy's more of a chaotic entertainer than a legit title contender. He's got that one clean win over Dan Hooker and a viral knockout on a complete wash Tony Ferguson. Besides that, he lost to Charles, Dustin, Justin, and now Patty. That's more losses than wins in the UFC, and none of them were controversial. Chandler brings the violence, I respect that, but he's not some example of a sustained success, you know? Then you got MVP, and I love watching MVP's fights, man. He's one of the most flashiest strikers in MMA, but the moment he faces a grappler with basic fundamentals, he folds. I mean, just look at the Logan Sterling fight. He got completely neutralized, and yeah, he won his UFC debut against Kevin Holland. That was a fun one, and he won that fight fair and square, but let's be real, that was a favorable matchup in my opinion. Holland isn't shooting takedowns or grinding you out. He's gonna strike, and MVP can thrive in those kind of fights. But then came Ian Gary, and that's where things changed. Gary stayed composed, didn't fall for the feints, and mixed in grappling just enough to shut MVP down. He took him down early, controlled the pace, and made it a fight where MVP couldn't get into rhythm. That's why Gary won, not by a flash, but by fighting smarter and keeping MVP uncomfortable the entire time. So yeah, MVP is a fun addition to the UFC. He brings something different, and when he's in his element, he's must-see TV, but we've got to stop pretending like he's about to be a title contender. He's one of the best strikers in the game, don't get me wrong, but his wrestling defense, it's pretty much non-existent. His takedown defense stats are basically zero, and in this sport, especially at the highest level, that's a massive hole that you just can't hide from forever, you know? And don't get me even started on Pitbull. I had hopes for him. I thought maybe he can give Yair problems or at least push the pace, but instead, he looked like a deer in headlights. Yair picked him apart like he was sparring. It wasn't even competitive, and it made me realize how insulated some of these guys have been. The moment that you're not the fastest or the strongest guy in the cage, the cracks start showing. Kaya Sakura came in with hype, explosive striker, huge following, big risen name, and then what happened? He got submitted in one round by Alexander Pantoja. That's the champ. That's the top tier competition, and it just showed how big the gap was, you know, when you really make the jump to the UFC. Reiner de Ridder, he had some success, yeah, but let's not act like he's out here running through the middleweight division. He almost got destroyed and lost to GM3, a guy who's known more for his grit than clean striking. And when he actually stands across from someone like Robert Whittaker, someone with real footwork, fast hands, and takedown defense, it could get ugly real fast. I mean, let's just say how it is, that hype train might come to a screeching halt. So yeah, I'll admit some of these guys are getting thrown to the wolves, but that's the reality of the UFC. There's no soft landing here. You come in as a former champ from another promotion, you're expected to deliver. No tune-ups, no warm-ups. This is the big leagues. You gotta prove that from the jump that you belong. Now, to be fair, not everyone fails. I'm not saying that, okay? And if you're saying that in the comments, then you're a liar. That's the first thing, because I'm not blind to that, okay? Some guys do make it work. Eddie Alvarez came in and won the belt. Yuri Prochazka made a statement and even won the belt too. Even De Ridder, for all his flaws, is still in the mix. So yeah, it happens. But when most of these so-called killers from the other promotions start falling flat against UFC level talent, it says a lot about that skill gap. Let's be real. And I think one of the biggest problem, and not enough people are talking about this, is the mentality of these fighters coming over from other promotion. Skill set matters, training camps matter, but mindset, that's what separates the UFC killers from everyone else. And honestly, that's where a lot of these guys fall short. Because when you look at the top of the UFC fighters right now, that's a pattern. These dudes are wired different. They're not just fighting for a check, they're fighting to be the best in the world. They train like it, they live it. The UFC doesn't baby anybody. You either grow under the pressure or you get exposed. But a lot of these guys from Bellator, PFL, or One Championship don't bring the same fire. Some never aimed for the UFC. They were just fine being stars in a smaller pond. Easier schedule, padded resume, less pressure, and when those guys finally do the crossover, it shows. They're not used to being tested. They're not used to having to adjust. They're crumbling under real resistance. Even when a familiar name comes back to the UFC, it's usually someone who couldn't make it stick the first time. Winning outside the UFC doesn't always mean you're leveling up. Sometimes it just means that you found a softer path. And yeah, dude, I'm not giving these guys that much credibility anymore. Of course, I'll still be interested when a PFL champ or a former One Championship contender comes over. I'm not gonna lie, it's always intriguing. But I'm done treating a win streak outside the UFC like it means something automatically. I got gaslighted the first time and I'm not falling for it again. It's that simple. And let me be clear again. I'm not saying it's impossible for someone from another promotion to come in and make a real run. It's possible. It's just really rare in my opinion. The odds aren't great. More often than not, they show up and the second they get pushed, they break. Because let's be real, this ain't sunshine and like smooth jazz. This is the UFC. You're walking into the deep end and no one's gonna hold your hand. So yeah, I'll watch. I'll stay curious, but until they actually prove it here against real killers, I'm not buying the hype, okay?